Nobody dared to stand against the richest man in the city, until a quiet single dad, holding his little daughter's trembling hand, stepped forward and said 5 words that silenced the entire room: "She deserves to be heard." If this hook touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to True Kindness Tales for more powerful stories. Ava Moretti, daughter of tech billionaire Dominic Moretti, was known everywhere as the girl who lived behind glass, untouchable, unreachable, protected by wealth so thick that nobody ever truly saw her. People saw the mansions, the security, the private jets, but not the loneliness she carried like a shadow. Ever since her mother passed away, her father controlled everything around her: her school, her friends, her life, even her voice. Rumor had it that anyone who upset the Moretti family ended up jobless, bankrupt, or quietly disappearing from the city's social map. So when Ava transferred to Ridgewood High for her senior year, students kept their distance. Teachers treated her like a fragile vase. Nobody dared to look her in the eye. Nobody dared to speak her name. And absolutely nobody dared to help her the morning she stood frozen in the school hallway, clutching her books, while a group of popular boys blocked her path and mocked her for being Daddy's porcelain doll. She didn't cry. She just stood there, shrinking inside herself, because she knew if she reported them it would only make things worse. Her father would explode, the school would panic, and the boys would pay a price far larger than she intended. She didn't want revenge. She wanted peace. She wanted to breathe. That was the moment when a small warm hand reached out and tugged gently on the sleeve of her jacket. Ava looked down and saw a little girl with curly hair, a pink backpack, and big brown eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" the child whispered. It shocked Ava. Nobody ever spoke to her like she was human. Before she could answer, the child's father appeared, stepping between Ava and the boys without a hint of fear, as though he were simply taking his daughter to class. He wasn't tall or muscular, not threatening, just a normal man with tired eyes and a steady voice that carried more strength than any of them expected. "Step aside," he said gently but firmly. Nobody talked to those boys like that. Everyone knew their father was a powerful senator. The hallway went dead silent. The boys smirked, ready to throw back some insult, until the man looked at them, not with anger, but with disappointment, the kind that digs deeper than rage. "You don't pick on someone just because you think nobody will stop you," he said. "My daughter is watching. So are all of them." His voice didn't shake. His hands didn't tremble. He wasn't scared, not even a little. And for the first time in her life, Ava saw someone stand up for her, not because of her last name, not because they feared her father, but because they simply saw her. Because she deserved kindness. The boys finally stepped back, muttering under their breath, but none dared to continue. Ava exhaled shakily, shocked by everything that had just happened. The man turned to her, offering a small nod. "You're safe now." She wanted to speak. She wanted to thank him. But the words caught in her throat. Before she could find them, he walked his daughter away, not waiting for praise, not caring about consequences. He didn't even ask for her name. For the rest of the day, Ava couldn't stop thinking about him, the single dad who stood up when nobody else would, the man who didn't treat her like a fragile porcelain doll but like a person. For the first time in years, something warm sparked inside her chest. Hope. Ava had never chased anyone before, but something about the single dad stayed in her mind long after the confrontation ended. She found herself looking for him on campus, wondering how a man with so little power could stand up against boys backed by wealth and political influence. She discovered his name only after quietly asking a teacher, Ethan Hayes, a former carpenter who now worked as a part-time school assistant to support his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. No wealth, no fancy connections, just a hard-working father trying to give his little girl a safe life. And he still stood up to the senator's sons without blinking. That thought stayed with her as she ate lunch alone, watching Ethan share a sandwich with Lily under a tree outside, laughing at jokes only the two of them seemed to understand. Their bond felt warm, real, something she had never experienced with her own father, who only communicated through assistants and security briefings. Later that week, Ava gathered enough courage to approach Ethan and thank him. She waited until the school's courtyard was nearly empty, her heart pounding as she rehearsed her words in her head. But when she finally stepped forward, she felt her father's security team trailing behind her like shadows, and suddenly she hated how her presence always dragged fear into every interaction. Ethan looked up the moment she arrived. He didn't bow, didn't act intimidated. He simply gave a polite smile. "Hi," he said in that same steady voice. "Is everything okay? I wanted to thank you," she said awkwardly, clutching her books too tightly. For the other day. Nobody's ever. You don't need to thank me, he said gently. It was the right thing to do. She was stunned. Most adults who helped her made sure to brag about it afterward, posting about it online, boasting to her father, using her name to boost their own reputation. Ethan did none of that. He didn't even seem to care who she was. People don't usually help me, Ava admitted quietly. Not unless there's something in it for them. Ethan shook his head. Kindness isn't currency, Ava. Hearing her name spoken so naturally made warmth rise in her chest. But before she could respond, his daughter tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, can Ava sit with us? Lily asked. Nobody had ever invited her to sit with them. Nobody. If she wants to, Ethan answered. Ava nodded immediately, sitting cross-legged on the grass beside them. For the first time, she felt like a normal teenager, not a billionaire's daughter, not a symbol of power, not a burden. Just a girl. They talked. They laughed. Lily showed Ava her drawings, and Ethan told stories about fixing old furniture and building homemade toys. Ava felt her world expanding, slowly, gently. But the peace didn't last long. The following day, her father's black SUV arrived at the school in a storm of tinted windows and bodyguards. Dominic Moretti emerged with fury blazing in his eyes. Is it true, he boomed, that a school worker dared to interfere with my daughter's safety? Panic exploded through the courtyard. Students scattered. Teachers froze. Security spread out like a shield. And there, in the center of the chaos, stood Ethan Hayes, calm, grounded, unshaken. I helped your daughter because she needed help, Ethan said simply. Any decent man would have done the same. Do you know who I am? Dominic demanded. Yes, Ethan replied. But your title doesn't change what's right. A hush fell over the entire school. Nobody breathed. Nobody dared move. And for the first time in her life, Ava wasn't scared of her father's power, she was scared of losing the only person who had ever treated her with honesty instead of fear. Dominic Moretti had built an empire through intimidation and precision, and he expected the world to bow wherever he stood. But in that moment, facing a man with no wealth, no weapons, no influence, only truth, he didn't know how to respond. Ethan's calmness disarmed him more than any threat could. Students whispered in awe, teachers pretended to check their phones just to witness the scene, and Ava watched with her heart in her throat as the two men faced each other. My daughter is not your responsibility, Dominic growled. Ethan shook his head gently. She's everyone's responsibility when she's being bullied and nobody steps in. Dominic's jaw clenched, his pride trembling under the weight of Ethan's words. Ava could see it clearly. Her father wasn't angry at Ethan, he was angry at himself. Angry that a stranger had protected his daughter better than he ever had. She stepped forward, voice clearer than it had ever been. Dad, he helped me because you weren't here. Dominic stiffened, as if the words stabbed through the armor he'd spent years building. I am always here, he insisted. You have security, protection, everything you could ever need. Everything except someone who listens, Ava whispered. Everything except someone who sees me. That broke something inside him. Dominic's expression shifted, emotions flickering behind his eyes, guilt, regret, and something softer that had been buried since her mother died. He looked at Ethan again, but this time not with anger, with realization. You're raising your daughter alone? Dominic asked quietly. Yes, Ethan replied. And doing my best. Dominic nodded slowly, then surprised everyone by lowering his tone. You stood up for mine, he said. I owe you more than anger. The crowd gasped. Nobody had ever seen Dominic Moretti swallow his pride, not in public, not in private, not ever. Ethan extended a hand, not for forgiveness, but for understanding. Let's just make this place safer for our kids, he said. Dominic hesitated, then shook his hand. It wasn't a billionaire shaking hands with a school worker. It was a father shaking hands with another father. A promise formed silently in that shake, a promise that Ava would no longer be a shadow behind wealth. Over the next weeks, everything changed. Dominic reduced her security presence at school. Ava joined Ethan and Lily for lunch every day. The principal implemented new anti-bullying rules inspired by Ethan's courage. And slowly, painfully, Ava learned what it felt like to be seen, to be valued, to be treated not like a fragile heirloom but like a human being. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Ava watched Ethan help Lily tie her shoes and suddenly realized something. Ethan had changed everything because he had no fear of losing power, he had none to lose. All he had was kindness. And kindness was stronger than money. Stronger than influence. Stronger than fear. Dominic eventually approached Ava with a softness she had long forgotten. You were right, he admitted. I haven't been listening, but I want to try. If you'll let me. Ava hugged him, feeling years of silence melt away. I want a life, Dad, she whispered. A real one. And for the first time, Dominic Moretti nodded without hesitation. Then we'll build it together. In the background, Ethan smiled, knowing he had done what nobody else dared to do, not because he wanted gratitude, but because he believed every person deserved kindness, no matter their name or their status. And Ava knew she would carry that lesson forever. Sometimes the person who changes your life isn't the one with wealth, or fame, or power, it's the one who simply chooses to stand beside you when everyone else steps back.